welcome back to my channel. I'm Tavern Bard, and I'm excited to delve into this monthly recap of Okay, no I'm not actually. I can't even pretend that I am because April has been a pretty bad reading month. I don't know what happened. Like, I swear that like the highest book that I have is rated maybe 3.5 stars. And maybe it's just because it was the best out of all the worst. I don't know. So I'm going to recap everything I read over this month. Whether it's the first time you're joining me for this or you're a returning viewer, I'm thrilled to have you here. So in this video, I'll be sharing the best and the worst, and then everything that's kind of in between, because there was a lot of in between. This month's book count is a lot lower than usual. But I mean, I still read about 5 or 6 books. That's a lot for me in 1 month because I tend to not have as much time reading as I want to. So I tend to only get to maybe 1 or 2 books a month. This time I got to about 6. And let me assure you, it's all for a good reason. This whole past year or whatever, as you know, I've released my first novel, Cove of Storms, self-insert promotion here. And I've been working steadily on editing the sequel to it. Starfall, which is not released yet, but will be as soon as I know what the heck I'm doing. So I'm excited about that, but that's taken up like most of my time instead of reading. So in addition to sharing my thoughts with you on this month's reads, I also want to let you know that I'll still be selling some of these books from my personal collection on Pango. And in case you didn't know, which I assume a lot of people don't because I didn't, Pango Books is a site similar to eBay, but it's only for books. And like, there's no, I'm not monetized or nothing like that. So this isn't a sponsor. I'm just saying that I use this site a lot now recently because it's a good way to only browse for books, and they're all really super cheap because they come from people's personal bookshelves. You can get books that are like retail value for $20 for like $2 or $3 max, plus shipping. And I like it a lot because it's supporting people peer-to-peer with used books instead of rebuying new ones. If you're interested, I'll leave a link to my shop below, but definitely do. If y'all have books of your own to sell, I'd recommend using that site, and I might try to buy some from you also. So there's that. And before we jump into it, I want to extend a huge thank you. I get so excited to talk about books and I want to keep doing it. So feel free to let me know what your thoughts are on these books, okay? All right, so I'm going to start with like the worst to the best, because that's generally how it goes, right? So let's start with the ones that didn't quite click for me. And while I'm not the type of person to quit on a book, whatever, I firmly believe that it's important to be honest about our reading experiences. And there's a lot of pressure to like a book just because it's popular or it's controversial or it's highly talked about or it's innovative or something like that. But in my personal opinion, if you're not enjoying it, you can just say that you didn't enjoy it, and you shouldn't feel bad about that. And like, I used to feel bad about not finishing a book. I used to not believe in DNFs, did not finish. I would always force myself to keep reading, thinking, oh, well, maybe it'll just get better. But I learned that we only have so much time. And if we're not enjoying it, if we're not enjoying something, anything in general, then we shouldn't force ourselves to keep doing that thing. And that includes reading. So also, I'm going to add, like, just as a quirky little thing, my favorite scene from each of those books. That way, at least they'll also have something positive with it, because there are positive things about them, yeah? But my first DNF, as you would say, is The Seascape Tattoo by Larry Niven. And I picked this up a long time ago at Dollar General, of all places, because the cover captured my attention. I'm like, this is a $3 book, and it's adventure. It's got a pretty cover. It looks like it's got sea monsters, pirates. That's all like my favorite things, right? And it just sat on my shelf forever. So I just randomly grabbed it the other day. I'm like, let me just read through it. It's a small book, whatever. No, it's nothing like the cover says it is. It's nothing. Okay, the pacing in this book is so fast, like you get confused. I don't know if I'd say you, but when I say you, I mean me. I got confused and like I didn't know what was going on. Okay, there's something about a princess traveling somewhere on a ship in the beginning for her friend's wedding or something, and she gets kidnapped. Okay, it happens, as one does. But first, we have these 2 characters: Eros, who is an outcasted Aztec. That he becomes this rough guy, this tax man, who people really don't like. And he don't like them anyway because they had something to do with his dad's death I don't know. And then we also have this 70-year-old wizard who's an advisor to the royal family. But you can see he's doing shady stuff on the side, like his own projects, his own research. He interacts with like mer people, and then he's like in disguise a lot. And now this wizard lets us know that magic is waning, that there's only so much of it left in the world. And most of it seems to have something to do with like tattoos. I don't know why, but at the most random moment, still they have these tattoos and they can move, and it does something. Like I don't know. It was just like one or two sentences of the event happening, and then something else has happened, and I'm like, wait, what just happened? Like we went from the tavern to the alley to the ocean to the castle to a desert. And like all in like one chapter. And like I usually like fast-paced stuff. The action, 90s movies are my favorite, okay? But after like 3 pages of the scenes changing, I'm so confused. So the main catch of this book, I suppose, is that these 2 guys have to work together to try and get the princess back. And it sucks because it sounds fun. It sounds like a fun thing, right? You have these 2 guys that hate each other, supposed to banter and whatnot along the way. But it feels so unnatural when they're traveling together. Like they're traveling with each other, and there's like there might be a sentence that says like they hate each other or that there's some history there. But they don't tell you what it is. They just assume there's history. And then suddenly they're sitting around a campfire and they're reminiscing about these old times as if they were old friends, like BFFs. Like, oh, you remember that time I threw you under the bus and you didn't like it? I'm also a bit uncomfortable at this supposed romance that's going to be blossoming, okay? This wizard is 70 years old, right? But he only has eyes for the princess, who super young, like she's barely just of age, like just came in age or whatever, but she is totally into him. They were in the middle of the throne room or something, and he's like kneeling before her, and she's like, oh, I wish I could just be with you or something. But they're like, yeah, but you got to choose some suitors, do the princess thing. The queen actually gives up for her daughter. She's like, oh, my daughter's been kidnapped. Anybody who can get her back, because she had plenty of suitors, right? So she threw out the invitation to the suitors, like, oh, get her back for me, and y'all can marry her. So then the wizard takes it upon himself, I think, to go rescue her so he can have a chance at marrying her. I don't know. But the fact is that he's like 70-something, because he's disguising his age, and she is not 70-something. So I want to say that because these 2 are enemies, then they like become friends for a minute. And when they find the princess, that she might end up choosing the other guy over the wizard, and it might piss them off to where they'll get mad at each other. I don't know, but it sounds a good concept, and I was definitely intrigued by the cover, except there was like no ocean stuff. There was like little to no sea stuff. The action is definitely the funnest part about this book. So on to my favorite scene of the book. I wasn't liking this book until I got to a scene early on that made me laugh out loud. And that's rare. I'm going to give this book props for that, because that doesn't happen very often. I don't know if it's because of how dumb it was or because it was just really funny to me, okay? But there's a scene where Eros is in an alley, okay? And he's hanging out, whatever, and he sees this girl that he knows is kind of, what's the word? I don't want to say easy. Anyway, he easily gets seduced by her because he's like, hey girl, what's up? And they start doing adult things. She gets on his lap, okay? Like they're going to start doing the things. And they're both naked, okay? In an alley. He's naked. She's got her dress up or whatever. And then there's an ambush, okay? It's an ambush. And she set him up. So she's telling these guys, oh, get him. I've got him, And he's trying to fight while she is holding on to him and clinging while they're naked. And he's trying to like get his sword from where it's like stuck on the ground, and it's just funny to me because she's clinging to him while they're naked, and he's like trying to fight off these guys, and he's like, get off of me, and she's like, get him. And then at one point he's like, oh man, I wish it was a man that was riding me. And how would that help? And he has to pull his pants up while he's trying to escape the rooftops. He actually had to like hit her to get him off. It's so stupid. And he's like on the rooftops and he's running and he's pulling his pants up while people are chasing him. And he's like, oh my God, I'm making on the roof. Anyway, the next one is going to be a bit controversial. Okay. I know this, but please bear with me because I almost didn't even think about mentioning it just because of how popular it is. But that I want to refer back to what I said about before, that you shouldn't feel bad if you're not enjoying something, and it could be for any reason. But this book I'm talking about is Babel by R.F. Kuang. And some people say that the Poppy War was too depressing or dark, but I actually like that one a lot more just because of the action and the fantasy and the magic involved with it, and that it wasn't afraid to cross these moral boundaries. This book, on the other hand, seems like the exact opposite of that. It seemed like it took like a moral high horse stance, and like that is not my type of character. I want to be in with the dark gang. You know what I'm saying? The ones who make the morally gray choices and the ones that actually make us question ourselves, not the ones that preach to us. So this book was sent to me when I tried out the TBR service, the book recommendation one. And I literally almost felt insulted. Every book they sent to me were very similar. And I don't know how in the world they thought that I would be interested in these kind of books from what I put down. Like I put down stuff like, I like The Princess Bride, The Witcher, Game of Thrones, that kind of stuff. So I'm like, why are you sending me these books? Do you think I need Jesus? And I tried to stay away from this book because I knew it was so liked and controversial that I didn't even look up what it was about. I was expecting really good things, okay? And I didn't go into it because I thought it was going to be similar to Sinlin Ascends, which is one of my all-time favorite books. Where he literally, it came before this one. He has to find his wife who's lost in the tower, and he has to go from floor to floor to floor to do different challenges. I thought this was the same exact concept. So I'm like, I don't want to read a book that's better than this one with the same concept. And it's nothing, not even similar. And don't get me wrong, like this book, it's beautifully written. The words flow really nice together on the page. But never did I imagine when I opted for fantasy books and thought I was sent one, that it turned out to be an historical contemporary read. Like, yeah, there are some hints of magic in the form of silver, but they're quickly teased to you. Then it's like, oh yeah, but you don't need to know that yet. And they just go into something else. The main goal of the book is to tell us that people were racist in the early 1800s. Like, we didn't know that already. We knew that. This is a 500-page book. Why are you telling me these things I already know? What about the plot? What about the action? What happens? What's going on here? It felt overly preachy about things. And I just wanted to read books for fun, I don't want to read about politics and opinions and history. I would read a history book. And after about, I got 300 pages in. And that's over halfway. And it took me that long to realize, look, I'm just not having fun. We got this far and nothing's happening yet. And yeah, maybe something good happens at the end, but I shouldn't have to force myself to get through 400 pages just to get to the good part. And the main character is really, really passive. 300 pages in and nothing is happening. He's waiting, he's listening to lessons, there's debates going on. And that's it. That's the entirety of this book. But it does lead me to my favorite scene, I guess. I can't even really tell you one because there isn't one. I can't think of any particular scene that stood out to me in this book. But the parts I did enjoy were the ones where they talked about language and the root base of it. I can get into that all day. It's so fun and fascinating to learn about other languages, especially when the root of our words. Well, especially when you think about why words are called what they are. Sometimes you just wonder that. Why is this called a door? You try to think about what the word means. And, so I think it's a cool concept that it just kind of stemmed from that. Take for, Japanese, for example, the word fireworks is hanabi. But it's written of these two characters, one meaning flower and fire, which is really cool because, it's like that. It's like trying to describe something and not having a word for it. And then that becomes the word meaning of the word. Everyone seems to complain about the lectures being the most boring parts of the books, but to me, they were the only interesting parts in this book. Now that we covered the books I didn't finish, let me turn my attention to the books I did finish. However, they're still the lowest on my list for the month, going up. First up is The Luminaries by Susan Dennard. with a 1.5. Ouch. Okay, I rated it up to a 2 on Goodreads. I don't even know where to start. But everything that happens in the forest, like when they're actually doing something, that part's fun, okay? And like that's what the book is trying to draw you into. There's a creepy forest that they kind of have to do pest control sometimes. In a hidden village, and there's just their life. They hunt their creatures and keep the rest of the people safe. It's only a small portion of the book, like 3 small parts out of the entire book. The rest of it is all about family drama, and it's the stuff you get when you read books about moody teenagers. It's like if the writers of Riverdale wrote Supernatural. And now, there are 5 pages of exposition before any dialogue is said. It could have just had 1 more page, and it could have said, oh, she did the trials, the end. I'm not really a fan when you try to mix modern times with fantastical times, because some things start to make sense and then some things don't make sense. Like, we're in a secluded, creepy town. Cell phone service don't work or whatever, but yeah, there are things like apartments. No cell phones, but there's still internet. And coffee shops. How do you have internet but you can't get cell phones, since you need the same service to get one or the other? And of course we're dealing with a whole story. All our characters are 16, so we're expected to treat them like adults, right? Who are so capable because they're trained in a harsh life so young. They're still children. They're not adults. That's what bugs me. Books like this treat children like they're better than adults because they're children. And most of the book is trying to make us just kind of feel bad and relate to her about how she's been treated like an outcast for something her father did, and then leaving her alone with her mom. And of course, to raise her on her own for just more drama. And then once you find out in the end, then you think back to, okay, well, that makes sense. But then the ending is left open. So you don't even get answers to things that like the whole book was asking the entire time. You don't get the answer. You're trying to set it up for a sequel that I definitely don't want to read. I'm just tired of these introverted, sad, emo characters who are supposed to be like secretly cool because they guard themselves. And it almost feels insulting when an author thinks that we people as readers are somebody who can relate to a main character like that. Okay? The whole thing comes off as like, a sad art student who hates popular kids. My family's so special because drama. Look, I'm having a school scene, so let me show you how hard my life is because of everybody else. That's what it comes off as, okay? And it seems really selfish to me because it doesn't take in the concept that everybody, the older you get, yeah, when you're a teenager, the world seems against you and you feel those things. But once you're older, we know that everybody has their own problems that they're working through. Everything's not about you. Everybody has similar experiences. And she doesn't seem to care what's going on with anybody else's life, because everybody else's life seems perfect. But nobody's life is perfect, yeah? It's only about her drama, her family. But even without that, I got this book because I thought it would be about the cool monster hunting stuff. But it's just YA contemporary school stuff with a few, oh, remember these monsters exist type of reminders, okay? And don't get me started on Jay. Jay, why does he act like a 40-year-old man? I thought this guy was 40 when he popped up. He's getting high and he's drinking at school. Like, what are you doing? So one good thing was her planning on taking the trials to earn her respect back. And I really liked the interaction between her and her brother. They worry about her taking the trial. And she argues that this is the only option for them. And until he finally agrees to support her, even though he's entirely concerned about her. That was a beautiful scene. It was a great interaction. And I think it's because we got to it as we were shown and not told, like a lot of the rest of it. I didn't really enjoy it that much. It was a great concept of the fantastical, but we're left with so many unanswered questions about the most interesting things, and it just seems like bait for a sequel, and I really don't want to read to find out. If I had to pick my favorite scene from the book, though, it would be when she went into the forest on her own after being turned away, which I'm not going to get into that. But she ends up here, and she fights this crazy monster she was entirely unprepared for. and something else ends up saving her on accident. She kills it on accident. And then she takes the head out, and she was going to warn people about something stronger in the forest, but they just assume that she killed the monster, and their opinions change of her, and they're like, oh, she's cool now, she's in with us, and she doesn't tell them. So that's my favorite scene. And yeah, mostly because the funnest parts did take part in the forest. Okay, the book made it seem like she just didn't have a chance to tell them. She did it on accident or whatever. I think it would have been more interesting to interpret it as she chose not to tell them, because this is what she has to do in order to succeed. And I feel like that would have been a stronger choice. Like, I'll do what I have to do because it's just that important to me. And later on, she feels guilty. She's like, oh, should I tell them? So and so. But then it's like, at the same time, in your head that it's not good to tell them the truth, because then you would lose your whole purpose, the whole thing you've wanted your entire life. You know that. And the book still is trying to just make her look like a saint, because she just didn't have a chance to tell them, but she still ended up where she needed to be, but not by her decision. So it kind of bugs me when they tried so hard to make their characters look too good, and they're just afraid to make them make choices like that. I think it would have been more fun that way, but whatever. Next up is The Iron House by John Hart. Yeah, I also got this at Dollar General for $3, and not bad. With $3 came 3 stars. Isn't that crazy? I got the impression that this was going to be a dark murder mystery between 2 brothers. That's what it made it seem like. And it was. The brothers are estranged after some time in an orphanage. But they don't start off with that. They start you off with a mafia story where this guy is a typical main character mafia story. He's like, oh, I got a girlfriend now and I want out. And they're like, no, you can't get out, because they're jealous or, whatever. And then it ends up with him having the mafia as his enemies while he's trying to survive with his girlfriend. But if it was just that, it would be a whole lot better, because that was the fun part of the book. Instead, it twists and it morphs, and we get into like a mental illness story and a backwoods story, until I'm like, what is happening? He goes to seek out his brother after a while, and we get a flashback of the orphanage and how hard their life was there, because that's what happens. And then how it had an effect on who they are today. And when he meets his brother, it turns into like a murder mystery, and then it evolves into like whodunit. Also a thing about mental illness, and then it morphs into like backwoods stuff. Some people complained about Michael's being too cool. He never misses a shot. He never gets hit and things like that. I honestly didn't mind his abilities. Everything happened so fast. It just seemed like fun action to me. And he was the best. That's why they didn't want to let him go. People were also saying that the coincidences were too exaggerated. Things happen too perfectly in order. I don't think so. I mean, he did go looking for things on purpose that happened to him. They didn't just fall into his lap out of the blue. But the big thing is, if you're not a fan of gore, it might be a hard read for you. I didn't think it was too over the top, but everybody else says that, oh yeah, there's way too much violence in this book. I don't know. I don't think it was too bad. If you're a fan of the random action movies from the 90s, like me, then it could be up your alley. I just wish it was more about that in the mafia part, because it felt like it was trying to do too much all at once. And we ended up way off the reservation by the end. It also tackles the big risk of mental illness in this book, and who's at fault when things happen. Is it your own fault if you're insane? Is it your own fault if you have mental illness? And that's when it started becoming a little boring for me. I thought they were trying to, at first I thought they were trying to excuse murder with the mental illness defect. And they were trying to make us agree, oh, well, the bad guys deserved it anyway. But luckily they didn't do that. It just turned into something else. I don't know. The best part about this was the mafia stuff, and I'll just keep saying that because that's all this book is. My favorite scene, which I don't remember entirely. Yeah, when it comes to favorite scenes, I'd have to choose from that kind of stuff, and probably one from early on in the beginning, because there's a few I could choose from. The first one would be when he's trying to get out of the mafia in the beginning, and they don't like that, so they open up gunfire on him, and they're they're shooting back and forth, and there's a lot of action going on. And he's even like in the street shooting at cars and whatnot. That part was funnest to me. That's what got my attention because it was early on. And then there's a later part where he's like he's around in the forest and the mountains at night looking for his old orphanage. And there's like this very serene, private moment. It feels like when he finds it, he runs into the guy who used to run it. And just the atmosphere of that is really cool because you know like something dark happened here. I also enjoyed a part where he thinks his brother might have murdered someone, so his first response is to get rid of the body. And his girlfriend is like super upset. See, people are complaining that his girlfriend was too whiny, too like nagging the whole time. She was just a damsel in distress. But I'm like, seriously, he is used to this stuff. He's used to seeing death and dead bodies, and this isn't fazing him. That would bother his girlfriend, or that would bother anybody, that this guy is not fazed by dead bodies, and he can move them and dispose of them really easy. So I think that's realistic to me. And from that point, she didn't want to be with him anymore because it's too much. But he cared more about protecting his brother. You know, when it's only you and your sibling, that's all you had. Of course, you know, I want to say they come over your partner at that point. And so his priority was focusing on protecting his brother and not paying attention to how it was affecting his girlfriend. I enjoyed that part of the dynamic. Yes, quick wardrobe change, okay? It's a new day. Editing takes a long time. Anyway, so next up, this one pleasantly surprised me. It's Never Have I Ever by Jocelyn Jackson. What surprised me is that it's so high up on my list and it's not even fantasy. And it seems to be a trend I'm having lately where like all the fantasy books that I thought I would like, I've been sorely disappointed. And I don't know if maybe it's because my expectations are too high or if I've already have my favorites and just like no other book is gonna compare. And I feel bad because I know that's unfair. And then like when I read books like this one, I have no idea what to expect. And it's a refreshing change when it turns out to actually be entertaining. So these do have a sort of advantage. I actually finished it all in one setting because I wanted so badly to see where this mystery would end. So we're in this like little Florida town where a bunch of soccer moms get together. And immediately when this happens that they all have secrets, right? I live in a southern town, okay? And I know the gossip. And when the new girl shows up, Rue, everyone is immediately drawn to her dangerous charm. She's a mysterious new girl who like shakes up these little suburban lives. It's obvious that she showed up here to ruffle some feathers on purpose. They just don't know why. And Amy, our main character, stays like incredibly loyal to her best friend despite Rue's constant power plays of like trying to change the dynamic of the friend groups and the stuff they're used to. And it turns out that everyone has secrets. I mean, who would have thought, right? People naturally do. What happens is when this person starts turning on everybody about their secrets, finally she goes to Amy. And Amy realizes that her life here in the present is far more important than the mistakes she might have made in the past. Which I can agree with that. It's a good concept, trying to just move forward and not live in guilt and doubt and all this for the rest of your life. It's not going to help anybody. The main problem that I had with it is that it was a little bit predictable where it shouldn't have been. And the ending was like completely erratic in a way that felt like it was just trying to hurry up and close everything with a random surprising twist. I personally felt like it was a cop-out to reveal that the villain ends up being a worse person than the main character. Because the point of this book was to try to prove how bad of a person the main character was. And then it turns out that you're actually worse than me, so I'm actually a hero. It just doesn't sit right with me because it's trying to force your main character to look good by like lesser of two evils. There still really wasn't any justice done. So we're supposed to just like kind of applaud her for just accepting her mistakes and moving on. I know what I said earlier, but at the same time, she's just like, oh, if I can get rid of the problem, then it don't really matter. I don't know. But at its core, Never Have I Ever is a great psychological thriller, and it keeps you guessing until the very end. I was very impressed by how it was able to tackle weight weighty themes such as like guilt, redemption, and the consequences of your actions while still being entertaining. So if you're a fan of psychological thrillers, then I highly recommend giving this book a try. Finally, we come to the standout book of the month for me, and surprisingly, it's YA. And you know me, I kind of hate YA, and I still read it. It's Princess of Souls by Alexandra Christo. And early on in the beginning, I didn't think I would like it because we're introduced to like all this exposition and this telling, not showing way kind of language. But the story itself ends up being so like enjoyable that I'm able to turn my brain off. So in a nutshell, the actual premise is fascinating too. King Sereth hosts an annual festival where his witch predicts the death of 200 volunteers, random villagers who are just trying to make a better life for themselves. And if they survive 3 times, then they win. And the catch is no one ever does, right? You can't really cheat death. He preys on them with false hope because the king uses their souls to maintain his immortality. And so it's really cool. It keeps them loyal to him because if anybody's tyrant and mean, right, he would have no subjects. But it gives them a chance to make them feel like they have a chance to succeed, when in reality they don't, because the house always wins. Unfortunately, the book is restricted by its YA genre. We have a 16-year-old girl, Celestra, who is basically held prisoner until she becomes the next witch, being the heir. Except, she doesn't realize it. She thinks, this is just my life. I'm not really a prisoner. This is where I live. He's just really protective of her because he's going to rely on her powers. We have a boy, Nox, who is out for revenge against the king for killing his father. So naturally, these two come together. Usually, they only get one prediction right. And then they get one prediction for free. And then when they survive that one, they have to survive 2 more on their own. But they don't know what the death would be. So when these two team up together, she can end up giving him more predictions so he can survive long enough to win. And then in return, he can free her from her prison of the tower and give her freedom. It's a loose Rapunzel retelling, which I did not know, but there are a lot of references to it that make it pretty fun. It made me smile, when you come across it, like it says, oh, well, too bad your hair isn't long enough. We can just use that for a rope. Stuff like that. So I can't be too hard on the book just for following its own genre. And the romance part is really sweet. I enjoyed watching it form as one of the best parts of the book. It's a classic enemies to lovers trope. There's also a lot of banter, though, that gets sometimes annoying. And I heard that this is people's biggest complaint about it. It sounds almost like they're being really mean to each other. Not like regular banter, like flirty or playful. It just sounds like insults back and forth. I enjoyed the first half more than the second because the pace started to pick up once they decide to actually leave the main area of the castle and go on this specific journey. Then it starts turning into it feels like this happened and this happened and this happened, and some of the more important details just sort of flew by. And I wish they had more moments to just sort of settle down and focus on that. But the fast pace did keep the pages turning, so it wasn't really that big of a deal. My biggest problem is just with the genre of YA in general and how it kind of babies its characters. Like, Celestra keeps getting these me thoughts that were starting to get annoying. And everyone keeps telling her, oh, it has to be you. You're the only one that can do this. You're our savior. So she becomes with this idea of, the chosen one. I'm descended from a goddess. I'm a princess. No, I'm a queen. And it's repeatedly over and over. And I'm like, we get it. The way magic portrayed is also confusing. It's described oh, I'm doing magic and stuff is happening, but it leaves a lot of the details to the reader's imagination. Sometimes that makes it feel like we want a little bit more of descriptions, but it's not a huge part of the book. I understand it's more magic is just there. It's not part of the book. I don't know how to explain it. There's another thing that came to mind as I was reading is that there are some times where the characters appear to be in this grave danger, right? But we remember that they've already seen their own deaths. So we know that they're not going to die here because they shouldn't die until the end when that scene happened. So it kind of takes away from the tension of those situations if you already know how they're going to die. You're not going to die falling off a cliff if it said they're going to die getting struck by lightning. You know what I'm saying? So maybe keeping the predictions more of a secret and revealing them later would have raised more tension. Something could have happened dangerously, and then they could have said, oh, was this it? Was this it? You know, like, no, I don't think so. And okay, the book alternates between perspectives of two main characters, Celestra and Nox. However, the chapter structure isn't really consistently alternating between the two of them. It's not like one, then two, then one, then two, then one, then two. One character might have 2 or 3 chapters in a row until another character gets one and then back to the other one. And then another one might have 2 and the next one might have 3. So it's a bit confusing because they sound like remarkably similar. Even in first person, it makes it really hard to tell who's speaking sometimes. I actually had to like go back and check the chapter headline just to remind myself whose chapter this is because I couldn't tell just by who was talking. It sounds like a lot of critiques, but I really enjoyed this book still. There's a lot of magic, romance, fairy tales, myth, and adventure. I just wish it was an adult fantasy instead of YA because the genre could be so frustrating, especially when it has that whole teenagers are the saviors of the world thing. The idea that a 16-year-old can single-handedly save an entire kingdom while capable adults just stand by and look stupid isn't really believable to me. Like, I don't care what you say, even 19-year-olds are children, they're babies to me. The book did it the best that it could with the restrictions it was allowed, and I enjoyed it for that, and I kept that in mind. So, and there you have it. I can't wait to see what everybody else is reading, and that was my whole month of reading. I know it wasn't the best, and I actually already started on May's books, which are proven to be a lot better. So thank you for joining me today on this video, and I hope you share some of my opinions. Don't forget to check out my Pango if you're interested in buying cheap books or just the site in general. Maybe sell your own, and I might browse you by chance. Because some of these books I've reviewed today are actually going up for sale. And I'm even going to sell my own book on there for like half the price. You can get it on Amazon or anywhere else because I get author copies at a discount, yeah? So it's cheaper if I sell it myself. And don't forget, I have an upcoming sequel on the way following that one. Almost done with the editing, hopefully. As always, happy reading, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.